The snow fell thick and heavy, smothering the land like a burial cloth pulled tight over the world. It swallowed sound, softened edges, and made even grief feel heavier. Mateo Vargas drove the shovel into the frozen ground again and again until his shoulders burned and his breath came out in white clouds. His palms were blistered beneath his gloves, but he did not stop. He never stopped early on this hill. He knelt between two wooden crosses, the cold biting through the knees of his pants. One cross read, Isabel Vargas. The other read Ana Maria Vargas, though the child had lived barely an hour. 3 winters had passed, and still Mateo came every Sunday, planting flowers that never survived. He talked to the ground like it might answer him back. "You should have lived," he said softly. His voice cracked in the cold. You both should have stayed." The wind rose from the canyon and cut across his face. A storm was moving fast from the range, and still he pressed a burlap-wrapped rose into the dirt with bare hands. Isabel had loved yellow roses. He had buried 3 in the same spot since October. None had lasted a week. Boots crunched behind him in the snow. "You trying to kill yourself out here?" a voice called. Mateo did not look up. "I told you I'd come back for one last planting. You say that every week." Teo Domingo stood above him, wrapped in an old wool coat, his white hair flattened under a soaked hat. He shook his head slowly. "Ground's frozen. Ain't nothing grows where the soil don't want it." Mateo stared at the dirt, his fingers numb, his jaw trembling. Not from the cold. "I need to try. Oh, she wouldn't want this. She's already dead," Domingo said gently. "You turning into a ghost won't bring her back. Somebody's gotta remember her," Mateo said. "Right?" The wind howled harder, flinging ice through the air. Domingo sighed and offered his hand. Mateo ignored it. Finally, he stood on shaking legs and adjusted the drooping rose like he was tucking in a child. "I'll come back after the snow," he said. Domingo did not argue. They rode back through the whiteout toward Rancho Cielo Azul, the storm swallowing the valley whole. By the time they reached the adobe house, Mateo sat in the saddle longer than he should have, staring at the dark windows. Silence pressed against his ribs. Inside, the fire flickered, but the house felt empty. No laughter, no music, no smell of Isabel's cooking. Just echoes. As Mateo ate his stew standing by the window, washed the bowl carefully, then froze when a knock came. Not at the front door. From the barn. He grabbed the rifle from the wall and stepped into the storm. Snow blinded him as he crossed the yard. Another knock came, quick and desperate. Mateo flung the barn door open, weapon raised. A woman stood there, wrapped in a tattered coat, soaked through. Black hair clung to her face. She looked no older than 25. Her lips were blue, her eyes wide with fear. Behind her stood 2 children. A girl clung to her skirt, maybe 8. A boy stood barefoot, burlap tied around his legs for shoes. "Please," the woman said, her voice shaking but steady. "We just need shelter for the night. We'll leave at first light. We won't take anything." Mateo did not lower the rifle. The boy swayed, a hunger etched into his face. Without a word, Mateo stepped aside. The woman hesitated, then guided the children inside. Mateo hung a lantern and laid out blankets, careful not to come too close. "Thank you," she said. "We'll be gone by dawn." "The storm won't be," he replied. The boy made a soft sound then, a quiet hum that floated through the barn like smoke. Mateo's spine went rigid. That melody. Isabel's lullaby. The rifle slipped from his hands and hit the floor. Mateo stumbled back, staring at the boy as if seeing a ghost. "Where did he learn that song?" Mateo rasped. The woman frowned. What song? The one he's humming. She listened, confused. He's done that since he was a baby. I don't know where he learned it. Matteo could not breathe. The boy looked up at him, eyes calm, ancient. Well, you can't stay in the barn, Matteo said suddenly. You'll freeze. The woman tensed. We're not asking for charity. I didn't offer charity, he said. I offered shelter. He lifted the boy gently. The child pressed his head against Matteo's chest like it belonged there. He was too light. Matteo carried him through the storm toward the house. The woman followed with the girl close at her side. Inside, Domingo looked up in surprise but said nothing. They dried the children, fed them stew. The girl ate in silence. The boy managed a few spoonfuls before sleep took him again. As Matteo knelt by the fire, the boy whispered, You smell like the lady. Matteo's heart slammed. What lady? The one with yellow braids, the boy said. She sings. The woman stiffened. Santi, don't. It's all right, Matteo said softly. Later, Puerta. When the house finally quieted, Matteo sat by the window, watching the storm pile against the glass. He had not believed in signs since the day Isabel died. But now, a boy with burlap on his feet slept by his fire, humming a song that should have been buried forever. And something inside Matteo cracked open. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, for the first time in years, the silence did not feel empty. It felt like waiting. Matteo did not sleep that night. He sat by the window long after the fire burned low, watching snow stack against the glass like the world was trying to close him in. Every few minutes, the boy stirred and hummed again, the same soft tune that had once filled this house with hope. Matteo knew every rise and fall of it. Isabel had made it up during the long month she carried their child, her humming while she stitched tiny clothes that never got used. The boy whispered in his sleep near dawn. She says it's safe now. Matteo's chest tightened. He moved closer, crouching beside the couch. Who says that? The lady, the boy murmured. With the braids. Matteo stood abruptly and went into the back room, shutting the door. He opened the drawer beneath the dresser and pulled out the small bundle wrapped in blue cloth. Inside lay a silver brooch, a ribbon with hand-stitched flowers, and a scrap of paper with words Isabel had written years ago. A song without a name. For the one who waits. For the one who will come. A soft knock sounded. The woman stood in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, but sharp with worry. He says strange things, she said, since our mother died. Matteo met her gaze. That song. My wife wrote it. She never sang it outside this house. The woman swallowed. Then I don't know how he knows it. They did not speak again until the children woke. The girl, Lucia, stayed close to her sister, quiet and watchful. The boy, Santi, drew circles in the ash by the hearth with a piece of charcoal, humming under his breath. By mid-morning, the storm had eased, leaving the land buried and bright. Domingo stepped onto the porch, squinting at the hills. Tracks, he muttered. Fresh ones. Matteo followed his gaze and felt the old instinct rise in his chest. Someone had been watching the ranch. That afternoon, Matteo saw a glint on the ridge through the spyglass, metal catching light, then gone. When he turned back, Santi was drawing again, this time a circle with lines reaching outward. Oh, the circle keeps us safe, the boy said simply. Before Matteo could ask more, hoofbeats thundered up the trail. 3 riders appeared at the gate. The man in the center wore a black coat and silver spurs, his smile smooth and empty. Valerio Ortega, the woman whispered. He found us. Ortega dismounted slowly, hands resting on the fence like he owned it. "I'm here for what's mine," he said calmly. Mateo stepped forward, shotgun low, but ready. "Nothing here belongs to you?" Ortega's smile thinned. "I disagree." He gave them 3 days. 3 days to hand over the woman and the children, or he would burn the ranch to the ground. When he left, the silence felt heavier than the storm. That night, Mateo made his choice. He would ride for help at first light. Domingo would stay and hold the line. The woman, Nayeli, stood on the porch as Mateo saddled the horse, pressing a worn silver charm into his hand. "It keeps the dead from forgetting you," she said. The ride was hard and fast. Mateo reached the judge by nightfall and told him everything. The ledger Nayeli carried, the threats, the men already moving. The judge promised to come with marshals at dawn. But on the ride back, Mateo saw fresh tracks heading toward the ranch. Too many. Too fast. By the time he reached home, smoke curled from the barn. Gunfire split the night. Nayeli fought like someone who had nothing left to lose. She fired through shattered windows, dragging the children into hiding while Domingo held the door. Flames licked the porch. Men shouted and fell in the snow. Mateo burst through the back entrance as another shot rang out. "Back of the barn!" he shouted. "He's there!" They met Ortega near the corral. The fight was short and brutal. Nayeli struck him down with the butt of her rifle. Mateo bound him to the fence as dawn broke over blood-stained snow. The marshals arrived hours later. Ortega was taken away, snarling promises. The ledger went with him. When the yard finally grew quiet, Lucia emerged from hiding and wrapped her arms around Nayeli. Santi stood by the hearth, silent now. The humming was gone. The ranch still stood, scarred but alive. But Mateo knew this was not the end. Ortega had friends, men who wore clean coats and carried papers instead of guns, and they would come next. The fire crackled low that night as Mateo watched the children sleep. For the first time in years, the house felt full. But outside, the land held its breath, waiting. The days after Ortega was taken away were too quiet, the kind of quiet that made Mateo uneasy. The barn smelled of smoke, the porch beams were scorched, and broken glass still crunched underfoot. But the house stood. That alone felt like a miracle. Lucia laughed again. She chased chickens through the yard, her voice bright and sharp, like it had never known fear. Santi stopped humming. Instead, he drew pictures in the dirt. A house. A fire. 4 figures standing close together. Mateo watched him from the porch, on his chest tight in a way that was not pain. Not yet. Nayeli stayed. At first, she said it was only until the roads cleared, then until the children were steady. Then she stopped explaining it all. One evening, as Mateo fixed the fence line, a rider came up the trail carrying an envelope sealed in red wax. No name, no greeting, just paper heavy with threat. Inside was a notice from the Territorial Land Office. Rancho Cielo Azul was under review. Without a proper deed, the land could be seized and reassigned. They couldn't take it with fire, Domingo muttered when he read it. So they're trying ink. Nayeli folded the letter slowly. They won't stop. No, Mateo said. They won't. They rode to Santa Fe together. Mateo, Nayeli, Domingo, and the children. The city felt wrong under their boots, a stone and law and voices that had never touched soil. The hearing room was cold and full of men who spoke softly while cutting deep. They questioned everything. The deed burned with Mateo's father, the years without filing, the violence at the ranch. Nayeli stood tall when they spoke of Ortega. "We defended ourselves," she said, "because no one else would." The men wrote notes. They frowned. They delayed. No ruling. Just waiting. Back home, surveyors came next. Measuring chains dragged across the land like scars. Stakes were driven into soil that had fed generations. One man smiled while he worked. "They're marking it for taking," Domingo said. "Like cattle." That night, torches appeared again near the tree line. Not close enough to burn, just close enough to warn. Mateo did not sleep. The next morning, Nayeli said quietly, "We can run." Mateo shook his head. "Not again. Not ever." They chose a different fight. Mateo rode to the printing office in town and laid the ledger, the priest's registry, and his father's journal on the desk. "Print it," he said. "All of it." By dawn, papers were nailed across the plaza. Names were named. Crimes were written. The story of Rancho Cielo Azul spread like fire. Only this one brought light. Other ranchers came forward. Old men with broken hands. Women with quiet rage. Stories poured out. Ortega had been one head of a larger beast. The land office called an emergency hearing. This time, the room was full. Lucia stood beside Nayeli, holding a drawing of the ranch. Santi carried a smooth stone painted blue and green with a heart in the center. When asked why they fought so hard, Mateo spoke simply. "Because this land buried my wife and child. Because it fed us. Because it remembers us." The commissioner looked tired when it ended. The seizure was stayed. The land was declared a protected holding pending full review. It was not a victory, but it was enough. They returned home under a wide blue sky. The house waited. The barn waited. The land breathed again. That night, Mateo sat by the fire with Santi leaning against him. The boy did not hum. He slept peacefully, finally empty of whatever had passed through him. Nayeli watched from the table. "She doesn't come anymore," she said softly. Mateo nodded. She knew when to leave. Silence filled the room, warm and earned. Later, when the children slept, Mateo stood on the porch with Nayeli. The stars were sharp overhead. The cold bit, but he did not mind. "You saved us," she said. Mateo shook his head. "You arrived." She smiled, small and real. For the first time since Isabel died, Mateo felt the land settle beneath his feet. Not healed, but alive. Sometimes miracles do not come shining and whole. Sometimes they arrive in rags on Christmas Eve, knocking on a barn door, asking only to stay.